You bought a Mercedes for engineering perfection, but that recent $3,000 repair bill feels like a ticking time bomb. You are bleeding cash because you're blindly following the dealership's manual right off a massive financial cliff. Today, I am exposing the classified maintenance secrets master technicians use to push these complex German machines past 300,000 miles without major repairs. The first few will shock you, but the final secret changes everything completely. Let's begin. Number 12. The 10,000-mile oil change trap. You take your pristine luxury sedan to the dealership and they tell you with a completely straight face that you only need to change your engine oil every 10,000 miles. It sounds incredibly convenient. It saves you time. It sounds like German engineering at its absolute finest. But behind closed doors, independent mechanics are laughing and your engine is slowly choking to death. That 10,000-mile interval is nothing more than a calculated marketing gimmick designed to lower the estimated cost of ownership for the very first owner. It is strictly not designed to help your engine survive long past the warranty period. Here is the surgical breakdown of what is actually happening inside your engine block. Modern Mercedes engines use variable valve timing systems and complex hydraulic timing chain tensioners. These highly sensitive components rely on engine oil not just for lubrication, but as a hydraulic fluid to actuate mechanical movements. When you push your oil to 10,000 miles, the intense heat of the engine breaks down the chemical viscosity of the synthetic oil. It shears down, losing its protective barrier, and begins to form heavy carbon sludge. This sludge clogs the microscopic oil galleys feeding your timing chain tensioners. When the tensioners lose hydraulic pressure, your timing chain develops slack. It starts slapping against the plastic timing chain guides. Eventually, the plastic guides shatter, the chain jumps a tooth on the camshaft gear, and your engine's pistons violently smash into the engine's valves. A simple, predictable failure just turned your beautiful car into a $15,000 paperweight. The secret? Change your fully synthetic oil every 5,000 miles. No exceptions. It is the cheapest insurance policy you will ever buy for a German car. But if you think neglecting your engine oil is an expensive mistake, wait until you discover the bold-faced lie dealerships tell you about the fluid running underneath your floorboards. Number 11. The lifetime transmission. Fluid lie. Have you ever noticed that the word lifetime sounds absolutely fantastic until you actually read the fine print? Mercedes-Benz dealership service advisors love to tell customers that the automatic transmission fluid in their modern vehicles is a lifetime fill. They will swear up and down that the sealed unit never needs to be cracked open or serviced. But here is the brutal, incredibly expensive truth you need to understand. Lifetime merely means the lifetime of the transmission, which will be painfully short if you never change the fluid. You are literally driving on borrowed time. Let us go in depth into the anatomy of your automatic transmission. Inside that aluminum casing are dozens of clutch packs, planetary gears, and a highly complex maze of hydraulic channels called the valve body. Every single time your car shifts gears, those clutch packs create microscopic amounts of friction material that flake off into the fluid. Over tens of thousands of miles, your once pristine red transmission fluid turns into a dark, abrasive, metallic sludge. This abrasive sludge gets pumped directly through the mechatronic unit and the conductor plate, the sensitive electronic brain of your transmission. The microscopic metal shavings bridge electrical connections on the conductor plate, shorting out the speed sensors. Suddenly, your car violently jerks, locks itself into second gear, and throws a massive check engine light. The dealership will gladly quote you $6,000 for a completely new transmission. The reality? You should drop the transmission pan, replace the internal filter, and fill it with fresh fluid every 60,000 miles. This $300 service completely prevents a $6,000 catastrophe. If you are already realizing that the standard maintenance manual is setting you up for failure, hit that subscribe button right now. It helps us continue producing these deep dive guides so you can keep your hard-earned money in your wallet. Speaking of keeping money in your wallet, the next failure point is a silent killer lurking just beneath your windshield, waiting for the perfect rainy day to completely total your car. Number 10. The sunroof. Drain electrical flood. You love your panoramic sunroof. It lets the sunlight in and makes the cabin feel incredibly spacious. What you do not realize is that this beautiful glass roof is essentially a giant funnel for rainwater, and if you ignore the hidden maintenance required to keep it functioning, your car is going to drown from the inside out. Water intrusion is the #1 killer of complex German electrical systems, and it almost always starts right above your head. Here is the engineering reality. Sunroofs are not perfectly sealed. They are explicitly designed to let a small amount of water bypass the glass. To manage this, engineers designed a gutter system running along the perimeter of the sunroof track, leading to 4 rubber drain tubes that run down the pillars of the car and empty out near the tires. However, if you park under trees, pollen, pine needles, and dirt collect in those gutters. Over time, this debris washes down into the rubber tubes and creates a solid plug. The next time there is a heavy rainstorm, the water cannot escape. It backs up, overflows the gutters, and travels silently down the inside of your windshield pillars, pooling directly underneath your floor carpets. Here's the catastrophic part. Mercedes hides its most critical computer modules, like the signal acquisition module, underneath those carpets. The thick foam backing of the carpet can absorb gallons of water before the top ever feels wet to the touch. Your computers sit in a literal puddle, slowly corroding. One day, your windshield wipers turn on by themselves. Your power seats stop moving and the car refuses to start. You are looking at $3,000 in electrical diagnostics and module replacements. To prevent this, buy a spool of thick plastic weed trimmer line. Twice a year, carefully snake that plastic line down the drain holes in the corners of your open sunroof to push out any hidden debris. But electrical floods are not the only catastrophic cascade failure you need to worry about. Underneath the hood, a completely different type of material is slowly degrading, and when it snaps, it happens with zero warning. Number 9, the plastic cooling system. Time bomb. Open the hood of a classic vintage car, and you will see glorious cast iron and durable aluminum components handling the extreme heat of the engine. Open the hood of a modern luxury German vehicle, and you will see an absolute sea of hard black plastic. Dealerships will praise the weight savings and efficiency of these composite materials, but any seasoned independent mechanic will tell you the terrifying truth. Plastic cooling components are a ticking time bomb completely at the mercy of thermal cycling. Your engine operates at roughly 220 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, it cools down to freezing temperatures overnight. This extreme expansion and contraction, known as a thermal cycle, slowly leaches the chemical plasticizers out of the cooling system components. The upper radiator hose necks, the thermostat housings, and the complex coolant distribution pipes become incredibly brittle. They change from a durable composite into something resembling a stale cracker. One day, while you are accelerating onto the highway, the pressure inside the cooling system peaks. That brittle plastic neck snaps clean off. Within roughly 10 seconds, your engine loses every single drop of its coolant. Because the aluminum engine block is so lightweight, it immediately overheats and warps. The cylinder head lifts, the head gasket blows, and coolant mixes with your engine oil. A $20 plastic pipe failure just demanded an entire engine replacement. You might think you are safe because you only fill up with premium gasoline, but the next secret reveals why the highest quality fuel on the planet cannot save your engine from slowly choking itself to death. Number 8. Direct injection. Carbon. Buildup. For decades, engines used port fuel injection. The fuel injectors were located up high in the intake manifold, meaning every time they sprayed gasoline, that fuel washed over the intake valves, keeping them beautifully clean. But to meet modern emissions and power standards, Mercedes shifted to direct injection. This means the fuel injector is mounted directly inside the combustion chamber. The fuel never touches the intake valves. And that architectural shift created a massive, unavoidable problem. Your engine breathes. Through a system called the positive crankcase ventilation valve, hot oil vapors from the bottom of the engine are constantly recirculated back into the intake manifold to be burned off. When these sticky, oily vapors hit the incredibly hot, dry intake valves, they instantly bake into hard carbon deposits. Over 60,000 miles, these carbon deposits grow so thick that they literally restrict the airflow into the cylinders. Your engine starts suffering from rough, cold starts, random misfires, a noticeable loss of horsepower, and terrible fuel economy. You can pour all the expensive fuel additives you want into your gas tank, but because of direct injection, that additive never touches the back of the valves where the carbon actually lives. The only true fix is a surgical procedure known as walnut shell blasting. A mechanic removes the intake manifold and uses a specialized sandblaster filled with crushed walnut shells to violently scrub the carbon off the valves without damaging the delicate metal. Factor this procedure into your maintenance budget every 60,000 miles, and your engine will breathe like it just rolled off the assembly line. If breathing is important for the engine, maintaining its posture is just as crucial. Let's talk about the magical hovering suspension system that provides that legendary smooth ride, and how ignoring one tiny warning sign will bankrupt you. Number 7. The Airmatic suspension. Collapse. You walk out to your garage in the morning and you notice the front right corner of your car is sagging low to the ground. When you start the engine, you hear a faint buzzing sound, and the car slowly lifts itself back up to normal height. Most drivers think, oh, it pumped back up, the system must be fine. This logic is entirely backwards and completely destructive. That sag means there is a microscopic tear in the rubber air spring. Because there is a leak, the electrical air compressor has to run constantly to keep the car level while you drive. That tiny compressor is only designed to run for a few seconds at a time. When it runs constantly, it violently overheats. The extreme heat melts the internal piston rings of the compressor, and the heavy electrical draw actually fuses the metal contacts of the compressor relay shut, meaning the pump keeps running even after you turn the car off, until it literally burns itself out. Instead of replacing a single leaking air spring for $500, you are now replacing the air spring, a burned-out compressor, a melted relay, and potentially a damaged wiring harness for roughly $3,000. The surgery level tip? If your car ever drops overnight, do not drive it. Spray the air struts with soapy water to find the leak, and aggressively replace the $20 air suspension relay every 40,000 miles as preventative maintenance. Now, keeping that compressor running requires massive amounts of electrical power, which brings us to the silent assassin responsible for more ghost electrical gremlins than anything else. Number 6. Battery voltage and module stress. Modern luxury vehicles are no longer just cars, they are rolling server rooms. Your vehicle has upwards of 50 individual computer modules constantly talking to each other across a complex network. The engine control unit, the transmission control module, the climate computers, they all demand absolutely perfect, unwavering electrical voltage to function. When drivers try to squeeze every last drop of life out of an aging battery, they unknowingly unleash chaos upon these sensitive electronics. These severe voltage spikes and violent drops act like electrical shock waves tearing through your vehicle's computer network. The sensitive microprocessors inside your modules cannot handle the brownouts. They start throwing bizarre, completely unrelated error codes. Your blind spot assist stops working. Your infotainment screen reboots randomly. Your transmission shifts harshly because the mechatronic unit briefly lost communication. Worse, your alternator has to work overtime, operating at maximum output constantly to keep the weak battery charged, which burns out the expensive voltage regulator. The golden rule: replace your primary AGM battery every 4 years, regardless of whether the car still starts perfectly. If you drive short distances where the alternator never fully recharges the system, keep the vehicle on a high-quality smart trickle charger overnight. Are you starting to see how everything is connected? A weak battery destroys the alternator. And in the next point, we are going to explore how a completely different neglected part will literally cause your exhaust system to tear itself apart. Number 5. Fluid-filled engine mounts. When you think of an engine mount, you probably picture a solid chunk of thick rubber bolting the engine block to the metal frame of the car. That might be true for a cheap economy car, but your luxury vehicle is engineered for absolute silence and zero vibration. To achieve this, the engineers utilize highly sophisticated active engine mounts that are actually filled with pressurized hydraulic fluid. They are designed to absorb and completely neutralize the harmonic vibrations of the engine. At first, you will simply notice a slight vibration in the steering wheel when sitting at a red light. But here's the catastrophic secondary damage that mechanics never warn you about. Because the mounts have collapsed, the engine is no longer held firmly in place. When you accelerate hard, the entire engine severely twists upward. This violent twisting motion pulls forcefully on everything attached to the engine block. It stretches the thick rubber intake boots until they tear, causing vacuum leaks. But far worse, it violently bends the flexible woven metal joints of your exhaust system. Over time, this repetitive bending cracks the expensive exhaust flex pipes, leading to a massive exhaust leak right near your oxygen sensors, completely ruining your air-fuel ratios. Whenever you change your oil, take a flashlight and look deep down at the aluminum subframe below the engine. If you see dark brown streaks of dried fluid staining the metal, your mounts have ruptured. Replace them immediately before they rip your exhaust apart. Speaking of ripping things apart, a tiny $50 plastic valve sits on top of your engine, and if you ignore it, it will literally blow the seals right out of your engine block. Number 4. The PCV valve, oil catastrophe. We briefly mentioned the positive crankcase ventilation system earlier when discussing carbon buildup, but its failure mode is so destructive it requires a dedicated surgical examination. As your engine runs, the explosive pressure inside the combustion chambers inevitably pushes a small amount of gas past the piston rings and down into the crankcase, which is the bottom half of the engine where the oil sits. This creates a massive buildup of pressurized air inside the engine block. The PCV valve is a simple, spring-loaded plastic diaphragm designed to vent this pressure safely back into the intake. But because it sits directly on top of the engine, baking in extreme heat and constantly exposed to harsh oil vapors, the thin rubber diaphragm inside the valve eventually tears or becomes completely clogged with thick carbon sludge. When the PCV valve fails in the closed position, the pressurized air inside the crankcase has absolutely nowhere to go. The pressure builds and builds until the engine literally turns into a pressurized bomb. The air seeks the path of least resistance to escape, and that path is almost always the incredibly vital, incredibly difficult to reach rubber seals of the engine. The pressure will violently blow out the rear main crankshaft seal, which sits perfectly wedged between the engine block and the transmission. Suddenly, your car is dumping quarts of expensive synthetic oil directly onto the pavement. Replacing a $50 PCV valve takes 20 minutes. Replacing a blown rear main seal requires completely dropping the transmission out of the vehicle, which is a $2,000 labor job. Treat the PCV valve assembly as a mandatory replacement item every 60,000 miles. It is the gatekeeper to your engine's internal seals. If this level of preventative detail is changing the way you look at your car, drop a comment below with the current mileage of your vehicle and which of these secrets surprised you the most. I read every single one. Number 3. Spark plug gap in ignition. Coil meltdown. Most drivers treat spark plugs like a suggestion. They read the manual, see a 75,000 mile interval, and decide they can easily push it to 100,000 miles because the engine still feels like it is running perfectly fine. What they do not understand is the invisible, high-voltage warfare happening inside the cylinder head, and how ignoring it cascades into a massive financial disaster. At the very tip of a spark plug is a microscopic gap between the center electrode and the ground strap. The ignition coil's job is to send a massive surge of electrical voltage, often up to 40,000 volts, down the plug to jump that gap and ignite the fuel. Every single time that spark arcs across the gap, it vaporizes a few microscopic molecules of the metal electrode. Over thousands of miles, that gap slowly but steadily becomes wider and wider. Now your engine is actively misfiring. That cylinder is no longer burning its fuel. Instead, raw, unburnt liquid gasoline is being pumped directly out of the exhaust valves and straight into your catalytic converter. The raw fuel ignites inside the incredibly hot catalytic converter, instantly melting the precious metals inside the honeycomb structure. You just turned a simple $100 spark plug maintenance job into a $3,000 emission system replacement. Change your spark plugs strictly at the recommended interval, and always replace the rubber ignition coil boots at the exact same time to prevent voltage leaks. But engine performance means absolutely nothing if the vehicle cannot stay planted to the road. There's a silent wear item in your suspension that is actively eating your tires alive while ruining the handling you paid so much money for. Number 2. Bushings and the silent tire eater. When a classic car feels loose or wobbly on the highway, people immediately point to the shock absorbers. But modern luxury vehicles utilize a massive network of complex multi-link aluminum control arms to keep the wheels perfectly aligned under extreme cornering loads. At the end of every single control arm is a heavy-duty rubber bushing pressed into the metal. These bushings act as the flexible joints of the suspension. Over time, the sheer weight of the vehicle and the constant impacts from potholes cause the rubber inside these bushings to crack, tear, and completely separate from their metal sleeves. The failure is completely silent. You will not hear a clunk. You will not hear a squeak, but the damage is actively happening. When a lower control arm bushing tears, the wheel is no longer held rigidly in its precise geometric alignment. Every time you step heavily on the brakes, the momentum of the car violently pulls the wheel backward, changing the toe angle of the tires dynamically while you're driving. This sloppy, uncontrolled movement causes the tires to drag sideways across the pavement at a microscopic level. You will take your car in for new tires, and the mechanic will show you that the extreme inside edge of your expensive Michelin tires is completely worn down to the metal core, while the outside edge looks brand new. You will blame a bad alignment. You will pay for a new alignment, buy new tires, and the exact same thing will happen 10,000 miles later. The secret? Have a master technician use a pry bar to aggressively test the flex of every single control arm bushing when the car is up on the lift. Replacing a worn thrust arm bushing completely restores the tight, razor-sharp steering feel the car had on the showroom floor and saves you thousands of dollars in prematurely destroyed tires. We have covered oil, electricity, suspension, and seals, but this final secret is the ultimate weapon. It is the fundamental difference between an owner who is always reacting to emergencies and a master technician who sees the future. Number 1. The preemptive bi-directional scanner. The biggest lie ever told to drivers is that the check engine light is an early warning system. By the absolute time that glowing orange light illuminates on your dashboard, the catastrophic failure has already occurred. You are no longer preventing a problem. You are actively paying to clean up the aftermath. The check engine light is only mandated to turn on when a fault directly impacts vehicle emissions. It completely ignores dozens of other critical systems. Here is the master technician's secret that changes everything. Your vehicle possesses a massive hidden registry of shadow codes. These are minor, intermittent electrical or mechanical faults that the computer modules notice, but they are not severe enough yet to trigger a dashboard warning. For example, your transmission control module might register a shadow code stating that a specific hydraulic solenoid is taking 50 milliseconds too long to engage. You cannot feel the transmission slipping yet. The dashboard shows absolutely zero warnings, but that shadow code is sitting deep in the computer, quietly screaming that the solenoid is failing. If you wait for the check engine light, the solenoid will eventually fail completely while you're driving. The transmission will slip violently, burn up the internal clutch packs, and require a full replacement. But if you own an advanced bi-directional diagnostic scanner, a tool that can actually talk directly to all 50 modules in the vehicle, you can read that shadow code months in advance. You can preemptively replace the failing solenoid for a few $100s, saving the entire transmission. Stop flying blind. Invest in a dedicated European diagnostic scanner. Scan your vehicle every single time you perform an oil change. Read the shadow codes. Look at the live data streams for your fuel trims and alternator voltage. Stop guessing, stop reacting, and start predicting. If you apply these 12 strategies, you will entirely rewrite the lifespan of your vehicle. You will completely bypass the catastrophic failures that send normal drivers to the poorhouse, and you will confidently drive that machine well past 300,000 miles. If you found this masterclass helpful, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and never let a dealership control your wallet again. Keep driving, keep learning, and I will see you in the next video.